you didn't even have the decency, the manners to approach us and discuss the situation with us. We have given, some of them have given more than 10 years of their life of work to them, and they've not been reapproached to, and they could reopen the place literally in a click of a fingers.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are digging into a situation that came to light, came to my attention through the pandemic, and then I guess came to a head over the last few weeks. It's to do with a restaurant called Red Spice Road. Red Spice Road is an enormously popular restaurant in Melbourne that closed in May due to the pandemic. A lot of stuff happened. They closed down, they went into liquidation, and it was really sad. All their staff got sacked, and a lot of people were left without their entitlements. In January, the restaurant, through its previous head chef, announced that it was reopening. This is pretty exciting news. This is a big restaurant for Melbourne. It seats 300 people. It's a massively popular birthday party destination, work party destination, famous for its pork belly, sort of pan-Asian menu. But the problem with the reopening is that none of the people who were sacked in May were invited to be part of this new step on the Red Spice Road journey. They were left out in the cold and still without their money. This has been a particularly bad situation for the visa holders that were employed by Red Spice Road, and I'm talking to one of them today. Her name is Laura Dauphin. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks, Dani.
So, Laura, we've been in touch a little bit through my overseas workers help group that I started up last year. And so I heard little snippets of your story along the way, and it hasn't been great. But put us in the picture, like set the scene for us. What were you doing at Red Spice Road, and how has everything played out for you through 2020 and up to now?
Yeah, sure. I guess, it's a bit of an emotional ride, like a lot of us in that situation, in the sense that when I joined the company, I felt very fortunate to be a part of it. And that was back in 2018. And I did a full year literally with them. And they hired me, with what I had to give and everything, my experience, based from my previous roles and so on. And I ended up, the connection with them, to me, which is why it's even harder, is that I went through my own literally personal situation, and they supported me with my visa and actually assisted to help me out so that it could happen and I could keep on working for them, which was absolutely amazing. So I'm grateful to them in that regard. I have to say it, and I cannot and never will deny it. So it's just the backstab feeling when things went down the pan, and to be turned around and have nothing left within such a short notice, that actually hurts the most, and not feeling any kind of support after having given so much for it, basically. So it's that it was a very quick snap, sort of backstab, I guess, in a way you would put it that way. So that's how it feels. To sum it up, really, that's how it feels, really.
So, a lot of restaurants closed in 2020, when we were in our first lockdown in Melbourne. But tell us what it was like at Red Spice Road. Were you doing takeaway? Were you still there working? What was going on?
Yes, of course. So, we had fairly recently, back in November, relocated from McKillop Street, the beloved 12 years old venue that we had, to Queen Street in November, the 7th of November, top of my head. And then obviously we did the whole reopening, went through the whole Christmas season, great, amazing time, beautiful customers coming through doors. And then COVID happened. So things went down the pan towards the end of March for all of us in Melbourne, or March time kind of thing. And we went straight away and tried to turn around the whole business into a takeaway and delivery as soon as we could, and the fastest that we can, having a team being trimmed all the way through so that it was just a few of us standing to make sure the ship kept running kind of thing. I turned from no experience in managing websites, having to change the whole website and do the whole takeaway menus and putting it online, managing all deliveries, having the guys turning around from being, managing the pass at the restaurant, which is a massive one for a restaurant that can sit, up to 300 more in one sittings, to just being drivers and so on. We just used all of us dipped in and pitched in to use all of our resources, to just make it happen. So it was a few months of a turnaround of something that none of us had ever done before, but we did it, and our aim was to make it happen, because at the end of the day, we didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew this had to happen to keep us in our jobs, keep the business going, keep the company going, its reputation, which people love in Melbourne, and we put everything into it so that it could, and I think we did to the maximum, really.
Yeah. So I guess, from one perspective, you could say, well, it was a big business. It had a massive turnover that declined rapidly. There was no opportunity to keep the business afloat, and it ran out of money and it had to close. I mean, that's what you were told, I think, right at the start of May, right?
The JobKeeper, they couldn't wait for it to come around, which wouldn't have affected me in a sense that I'm not entitled for it anyways. But for my colleagues and friends, they could, I can't talk on behalf of any of the company's main people, obviously, because I'm not in the finance side of things. But from our point of view, it means that obviously it went in the pan. They didn't go through the whole JobKeeper situation, and therefore obviously things wrapped up quite quickly, basically.
So I guess with JobKeeper, the way that it's structured, the companies had to pay the employees and then they were reimbursed by the government. So it was a big initial outlay for any business. A lot of, some people borrowed money to do it. People scraped it together in whatever way they could if they wanted to keep their business going and to keep that connection with their staff. Red Spice Road decided not to do that for whatever reason. And the company that employed you, which is not called Red Spice Road, it's called Our Personnel, went into liquidation. So I suppose that, from this point of view, it's just an unfortunate business story, the victim of the pandemic. But tell me about what happened in January when you heard the restaurant was planning to reopen.
So whatever happened last year is like, as you exactly just stated, Dani, it's like a lot of business went through that, and things happen. It was a tough time, and we bounce for it. We try and do as much as we can for all of us, whether it's the old staff that's Australian residents or it's the temporary visa holders. We found our ways. But when you then come across January, and I didn't find it myself, I just came across it. Actually, my partner just showed it to me, and when you see that, that's when I guess I had the anger and the frustration of what happened a year ago in terms of the government not willing to pay back. I'm not pointing at the government as such. I'm just in the way the structure is done, that you get FEG for Australian, but what about the people? I did give all my time to that company and the economy and the industry to keep it going to the best of my knowledge and put my skills into it. So then that was my frustration at the time.
I'll just stop you for a sec, Laura. When you say FEG, so you're talking about the Federal Entitlement Guarantee.
Yes,
and the Federal Entitlement Guarantee is available to Australian citizens. And if a business goes bust and it doesn't pay them their entitlement, so that's, let's say, holiday pay, redundancy, time in lieu of notice, then the federal government will actually pick that up and pay those monies owed on behalf of the business to the employee or the ex-employee. But if you're a visa holder, which is your situation, you are not entitled to that. So your entitlements, you just didn't get a penny.
That's correct. That's exactly right. Which I feel, as a professional of the industry, I have given exactly the same amount as my co-workers who got it. So it feels not right not to get it. It doesn't matter whether you're temporary or not. You have been here. I've been in Australia for almost 3 years, and I have given that time and all my investment into Australia for that kind of thing. So it just doesn't sit right. So that was my frustration back at the time, which is when you and I reached out actually to you just to have a little bit of a vent and let it out. And I'm grateful for you being there for all that. But that January announcement obviously came as more of a nice, it was just like a nasty hit in the face, in the sense that it's like, to me, it came across in the sense that I understand you can't hire me again because as a temporary visa holder, you'll have to go through a sponsorship entitlement as a company again, which as probably the new structure that they've done, they don't have. So I will 100% understand that they can't do that. They can't hire any of us temporary visa holder. That's my guessing there again. Which, okay, fine, all right. But then there are all the other staff that are actually permanent Australians, whether they are Australians or on a PR or whatever. I know a lot of them, and they could do an amazing job at going back there. My point, and that's what I was saying, discussing it a few days ago, like over everything that's happened, it's just like you didn't even have the decency, the manners to approach us and discuss the situation with us. We have given, some of them have given more than 10 years of their life of work to them, and they've not been reapproached. And they could reopen the place literally in a click of a fingers. And they've never even thought about, what about we reach out to the person and try and talk them through and see how we could work together to do it. We understand what happened a year ago, less than a year ago, really. Was unfortunate, and that's fine, but could we work together because we know your skills, we know your knowledge, and we know you could actually help us in that regard. But they've not even approached any of us, and I think that's what was really nasty, is just not acknowledging the previous staff that could get back on board, and it's not having the manners to get to the temporary visa holders and tell them, we're very sorry, we are actually planning to reopen, but we can't get you, but we want you to be aware, and that if we could, we would do it. That's all I ask, honestly.
Wow, Laura. I mean, I think you're being pretty generous in saying that they couldn't do it, and I understand what you're talking about. So you were employed by them, and you were the reservations and events manager. Was that your job title? So, and you were sponsored to do that role, which means that the business has to go through a process and show that they're not able to find anyone locally to do that job, and they pay some money, you pay some money, and that you get a visa, which basically ties you to that employer. So you're in a very precarious position if that business doesn't continue to employ you. Can you just explain what happens if you're in the situation that you found yourself in?
Yeah, it's hurtful in a way that it puts you on a deadline, a very short one. So when it all happened, obviously, end of April, I was stood down. I was one of the last. It was two of us on temporary visa at the end of April, still on. So Mo, the head chef, was still on, and myself on very limited hours to keep the business going with the main duties and so on. I was then obviously called into a meeting and was stood down. And actually, one of the first things that I said was like, that's not the worst answer I expected. I actually thought we were closing down and that I would lose my visa. So that's what I actually said on the video conference to Sydney. I actually said that's not like the person on the other side was very like sorry for me, saying I'm really sorry to tell you that. And I said to her, literally, don't worry, it's actually not the worst I expected. At least I still have my visa. I can be stood down. My colleagues can get job keeper, and I will work myself through some kind of options. I don't know yet. I'll work it out. But then literally a week later, we were announced that the whole business was going to closure. So therefore, that gave me, in my head, I knew exactly what was going on. As a temporary visa holder, I was just over a year into my sponsorship as well. I still had another year to go for. And so that gave me 60 days to either, as you've stated before in other articles, to find a new visa, a new sponsorship, or to get out of the country. So that I'm an events manager. I'm sponsored under the occupation of conference and events organizer. That's what I do. That's what I've done for many years in the UK. So obviously, given the COVID restrictions and no events happening, I knew 60 days ahead, there was no chance of me getting a new sponsorship. There was nothing, basically.
Not many conferences, not many events that need organising in a pandemic. Exactly. So, Laura, what did you do in terms of being able to stay in Australia?
Yeah, I had to look at, as you can imagine, many options. I've got a wonderful immigration lawyer that helped me out going through my options to understand what could be on the board given what was happening and so on. So we had a good chat about all that. And I mean, the options were very much narrowed down to basically you get lucky and you find another sponsorship, whether it's Melbourne or regional or even another territory, because different restrictions were applied to different territory in Australia. Or my other path was going down the student visa, which I've got my bachelor degree in events management, and I can always add on to that. There's always skills to add to it, which is exactly what I decided to do, because I literally worked through the 60 days to the last bit of it to try and get a sponsorship, because I'm more of a professional than an academic person. So I really wanted to do the work bit of it because that's what I love. I've got the passion for actually delivering the experience. Unfortunately, given everything, that didn't work out. So yeah, I went on literally just down to a few days off my 60 days, the student path. So I've just added on a social media marketing degree to my CV, which is very beneficial anyway. So I'm very grateful for it. It got me a year in Australia. It's a pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic. So I had to think through options to use that time the right way, basically. So going back to Europe for me, it's not that it's not an option, it's that it's not beneficial whatsoever. I've left so long ago that to me, investing the time and everything into study and staying in Australia was a lot more beneficial. And then it was just a question of saying in my head, let's see what happened when we go through it. And now it's been almost a year.
Yeah. So one of the issues with going onto a student visa is that you're then only allowed to work 40 hours a fortnight, right?
That's correct, exactly. Yeah, you're limited in terms of hours, which I think for a lot of students could be, I mean, I guess I'm potentially one of the different kind of student, as in I'm not just studying something and working a side job to get money in like some could be, I'm guessing. I'm a hospitality person. I've been the whole of my life because that's my parents' background. I grew up in the industry from the age of 6 years old. So it's actually in my blood kind of thing. And I've just built on it and found my passion into events and so on. So when that happened, that I had to go back to being a student, I was like, okay, I'll just add on something that I'd like to actually add to my CV, which is marketing. It's a big lack from my perspective that I'd like to really push into. So it is beneficial for sure. But yes, it has the restraint of my experience is manager's level. And obviously when you hire a student on 20 hours, it's not going to work. When you hire a manager, I would guess as a business, you would look for someone who is full-time available and so on. I don't have that availability to them. It just feels like it's hard to find someone who'll be willing to hire you as a manager level, but on a part-time level. So I think I got very fortunate and I got that role at the current winery I'm at. And they're happy for me to be there at part-time job because they are only open a few days a week, given the restrictions. They used to operate 7 days a week, but it's now down to 4 days. So I'm only doing a couple of days to basically cover the 20 hours and they're supporting me in that regard. So, but yeah, I can't imagine that it'd be difficult. I can't imagine, that it would be difficult for any other students, depending on their levels and so on. But there's such a range of options and limited choices in a way that it makes the match very difficult to make, I think, right now.
And Laura, how much money are you owed?
11 and a half, a little bit more, 11,560, something like that.
So yeah, more than $11,000. And yes. Is that made up of annual leave? Or what's that made up of?
Yes, that's correct. So that's made up of, the redundancy, obviously, because they went into liquidation. So there's the redundancy payment in there, which is 5,000, and then there is annual leave, there is personal leave, and all that kind of that jazz. Yeah. So in a way, I mean, I joined the company on literally the 6th of May and then got made redundant on the 5th of May. So I literally wrapped up a year with them. But yeah, so I'm one of the lowest end of thing, I guess. But there's so many other of my colleagues who are also my friends that owed a lot more and have given a lot more time to it. So it's not about me, it's about them and us, basically, and all the others out there.
Well, I know that Mo, the head chef, is owed almost $40,000. She was there a long time, and she was also on the pathway to permanent residency with Red Spice Road. And so, you've lost your sponsorship, and you've gone through all the difficulties that you've gone through, as you've outlined so eloquently. But she also has back to zero with the pathway to permanent residency, and it just really highlights how vulnerable people are. Certainly, people who come here on a temporary visa that are under any kind of visa, but I think, the sponsored workers are in a particularly vulnerable position because whatever pathway they're on and whatever entitlement they have to stay in Australia is locked to their employer.
Exactly. That's very much it. I think that's the very, very, very hard part. It's like you said, like Mo was on her road to PR. I was literally halfway through my first visa, and the visa I was on could also grant me, the company is happy to keep on working and sponsoring me, get me another 2 years as well. So it just twists around your future in a very nasty way. So obviously Mo is having to change her perspective on everything and look at other options. It's the same with me, and as her and I'm not speaking for herself obviously, but we all have different personal and private lives, and we have to look around and look back and like, am I gonna lose, I've redone my private life in the sense that I've got a future I'm looking forward to, but now I actually don't know where it's going. And it's not just me that it's affecting, it's other people in my private life, and we don't know whether it's going to crumble apart or not. And I'm not saying that it was granted in the first place, because at the end of the day, we do come in on a temporary visa and we know it's temporary. But to have it shuttered in front of your eyes like that, instead of having definitely 2 years, potentially 4 years, going down to you've got 60 days, that's a very, very, very different step into the life of the personal life of different peoples and how they are managing everything. You're just having to turn things around in a way that you don't even know how to do it.
Yeah.
So that's also one of the hardest bits.
What do you think, Laura? So the owner of the company, Andrew Cameron, who liquidated our personnel, the company that paid you, not the same company that actually owns Red Spice Road, which is the Apples and Pears group. It's very complicated structure, and I don't even know much about this stuff. So I've dug into it because I feel so much for the people on visas that I've, written a story about it that was in The Age, and I'm chasing it down. I'm talking to all you people. I've spoken to Andrew, the owner. I've spoken to John McClay, the head chef that has come back to the restaurant to reopen it. And I mean, I suppose I always go into these stories and you feeling like, well, surely everyone's just trying to do the right thing, because surely wouldn't people just be decent and, it's just their business failed, what a drag. But now they'll try to fix it and make everything okay and help the people out that they should help out. I mean, what's your read on it? Do they just not see it the same way that I do?
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. Do they not? I don't know. I'd say honestly, and because it's so many things into it, obviously, as you can imagine. But yeah, exactly. When it happened, and I honestly was like, I'm not the business owners. I don't want to go through the financial situation, and I appreciate sometimes you gotta cut the tap because you just can't. You have a family and everything, and I respect that. And I was, regardless of everything else and how upset I was about everything, I was like, it is what it is. I'll find a way, or I'll just, go back to Europe, whatever it is. And I had parked it. But when that happened and I see that, I'm like, do you not understand what's gone through everybody's life for the last few months? And you have the, I don't want to be rude on a podcast. And you have the courage, I guess. No, it's not courage. It's not. It's you have the audacity to actually go and say, we're happy to reopen. When I know, and if I may say, top of my head, unless I've got it wrong, but I don't see why I would, all the people, like not all of them, because some did go back to their country and some, but a lot of them on temporary visa who are not who are not going to get any of their money, are actually still in Australia. So you're posting this and they will hear about it, and you've got no issues with that. I mean,
Yeah. I don't get it.
Exactly. Why would you do that? And that goes back to my point earlier, Dani, about saying, to me, it's all down to manners. If at least you had the conversation with us to say, this is what's happening, we understand and we're sorry. It's just a talking thing to me. It's conversation. That's why I put it all down for a lot of what I do in my work. It's down to conversation and understanding and trying to get to know each other and whatever else. But there was none of that. I didn't mention earlier, not to you, but one of my colleagues actually applied for one of the jobs and he was not even replied to. He didn't get any acknowledgement that he applied for a position. He's a great staff, did a great job for many years at the company and got nothing, as in thanks. I'm not going to quote names and that's up to him to decide, but it's like you don't even have the I
the
can't
decency.
even put word to, yeah, exactly. I can't even put word to it, but you don't even have the exact decency to actually approach these people and you have that initial conversation. Because if you were keen about the company and rebuilding it and so on, you'd want to protect your reputation. And your reputation as a business starts with your staff because they're the one that represents you. We are the one that actually worked and represented you.
And I have to say, having eaten at Red Spice Road, it was the staff, and I'm sure it's credit to you and also to Christian Price, who was the general manager, who we will get on the podcast this week. The staff were really good. Like it was such a big beast of a restaurant, and there was I thought it really felt like a team. It felt like people who really believed in what they were doing. I go to a lot of restaurants. I feel, I give myself a little bit of credit for being able to understand what's going on to some degree. And yeah, it just felt like these were people who were really well trained, really schooled up in the project of the restaurant, and they were trying their very, very best to deliver. And it was a beast of a place.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Honestly, sorry, Dani, it's a credit to the staff that I worked with, but I had a year with them, and the staff on the floor, I can't give enough credit to them. They are all individuals, character, and they are all so amazing at what they do, so different, but complementing each other, knew how to adapt to a table and cater for the guests, read them, and do what was necessary. I've had so many functions and events, weddings and so on at the new venue and whatever else, small weddings and whatever it was, it doesn't matter. But the feedback I get, it was always about the staff and the person. Obviously, there's the food and everything that goes with it, but the staff is what also drives your experience through, and you can't deny that. And our team was built on, we knew how to work together and fit the right people in the right place depending on what was happening. And I can't give them enough credits because I was always so proud of sharing my feedback with the team, saying, please, like to all my colleagues, manager, restaurant manager, whatever, bar and so on, please share that with the team because they just so deserve it. They are so good at it. It's like, it's so nice to work in a place where your staff is just nailing it every time pretty much.
Yeah,
so it's like you can't.
So the ads that were up on Seek, the employment website, the ads were put up by Clifton's, which is another company that's associated with this business, with Andrew Cameron's businesses. And some of the criteria that are listed on this ad are that you will take pride in your workplace and be a great brand ambassador for Red Spice Road, that you have impeccable presentation and a positive attitude, that you have the ability to work in a high pressure environment and keep smiling. I mean, it's like, these people don't just like fall in the door randomly. It's like you really want skilled people that actually already exist out there that know the business. It also says we highly value our employees and offer a fun and exciting team environment with exceptional training and career development opportunities, a great salary and excellent benefits. So the great salary that these people are going to get and the excellent benefits, well, they'll get some of your money before you get it. Hey, Laura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm guessing, I don't remember it. It was a while back now, but I'm guessing that's probably the ad I went for myself. It's probably a copy and paste. Let's put it that way. So yeah, that's, that wouldn't apply to the current situation. But back in the days when I applied for the company, yes, it was like that. And I got what it says on the book until literally end of April 20 whatever. So yeah, nowadays, no.
Yeah.
Basically.
Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm glad that you've, landed more or less on your feet. I think Australia is so lucky that you're still here, sharing your skills and experience and enthusiasm for the hospitality industry. I mean, you're exactly the kind of person that I think the sponsorship visas are there for, people who can really add to the industry. So it's really only because of your tenacity and a bit of good luck that you've stayed here and you haven't been shunted off by the way that you've been treated. So thanks for sticking around. And I really wish you all the best.
Anyways. I appreciate that. That's all. Yeah, it's an amazing place, and I hope to be able to have the option to be able to give more to it. So yeah, for sure, it's a beautiful place.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your story, and we'll go out for dinner sometime, but maybe not to Red Spice Road.
No, I don't think so, right? But yes, we will, definitely, somewhere else. Thank you very much, Dani. I appreciate everything you've done for all of us. It's, there's no words, literally. There's no words.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.
Just keep going because it's just, keep going.
And we're working with a crew that has created a cube